I wish I could give you better news, but I think you know the truth. And that is that we are now some 300 delegates behind Vice President Biden, and the path toward victory is virtually impossible. So while we are winning the ideological battle, and while we are winning the support of so many young people and working people throughout the country, I have concluded that this battle for the Democratic nomination will not be successful. And so today, I am announcing the suspension of my campaign.
And with that, he was out. Sanders was out of the race. He drops out. I'm done. Thank you very much. I will be running from pillar to post now, telling you to go out and vote for one Joe Biden. Look, this was not a failure on you, meaning the burners, the people who are out there gesticulating, angry, pushing, hopeful, with this notion that a better world was possible. Even if it was moderately, incrementally so under Sanders, it was possible. So that's not necessarily a personal failure on any particular individual. Yes, our enemies are dancing on our graves. In this case, we were the ones that knocked. But the difference is, we weren't going against individual singular candidates. Meaning when Obama, Clinton, whoever else was in that race, those were candidates running individually with one another. We were literally running against an entire party that has said, no, we will take anybody else. We will take this decrepit, clearly handicapped man that potentially is a rapist. If it means stopping Sanders, even if that means that he has the best chance of losing to Trump, then maybe Hillary Clinton. That's acceptable. That's astonishing. But let's be clear, it is illuminating. You have a situation where Sanders has better policies, where people agree with those policies, where the Democratic Party, people who are in that party, fundamentally agree with him, despite the fact that they chose Biden. Now, that's not on you, that's on Sanders. I put the blame on Sanders. A certain degree of rigidity, a certain degree of unimagination, and an inability to understand how that level of pain that is in the world that he was trying to remedy, that if you indeed was trying to remedy that, then that should have burned into your soul with a sense of urgency that Joe Biden, who is the oligarch's avatar, was fair game to go after any way you needed to go after him, because this pain matters that much more than your personal friends for Joe Biden. But that's not what happened. I place the blame there. I don't necessarily place the blame on people in this case. That said, buck up. This is the time to take inventory in regards to what's taking place. I would say take inventory like your life is at stake. And try to understand, A, what happened, what were the failings, what were the things that were positive, what are the things that are positive, what are the benefits that we got out of it? Are there any benefits that we're using? Are there any resources that are gone, not had? Look, in every situation in life, there's going to be some point where you get knocked on your ass. It just kind of is what it is, what it is. It's almost like a law of nature of sorts. You will never have a situation where every situation is going to go swimmingly well. There are some situations where you are knocked out based on the first hit. There are other situations where it boils down to how can you take a hit. And in this particular case, beyond Sanders is what I'm getting at. And the question that I want to take a small amount of time, because I don't have a huge amount of time, but that I do want to explore a bit. Because I don't think we're as lost as I think people think they are. Even though Sanders is not part of the process, I don't think it's as lost as I think people think it is. There is such a thing as topping from the bottom. That's an S&M term, but basically what it means is the person on the bottom is taking exerting a certain degree of control over the person who's supposed to be the dominant in that relationship. Yes, your candidate didn't have it in him to wage ideological warfare. Blunt, ruthless, ideological warfare against a party and against what that party represents and who that party represents. For feelings. Hashtag feelings. for reasons of not necessarily disliking Joe Biden as a person, missing the point that it has nothing to do with Joe Biden as a person. I'm pretty sure all of these people are pleasant if you engage with them. The issue is what they do, how they function in the larger world, in the context of the system. That's what matters. Joe Biden is just the avatar of that particular system and maintaining things exactly in the way it is. And if indeed it burns you, it hurts you, it kills you, that your society is the way it is and you want to change that society, we need a political revolution to do it. Great! I agree with you. But don't tell me you want a political revolution, but you can't set shit afire because you're buddies with the guy. Don't tell me that. Those two things do not coincide with one another. Yes, this is a familiar argument that I've made over the past year or so. But now that argument comes entirely to fruition because of where we are. And I know a lot of people was like, leave Sanders alone. Don't touch Sanders. Sanders is okay. And you're saying that because he's in number one spot. Everybody thinks he's going to run away with it. And my point was whether or not Sanders runs away with it is secondary to the fact that it is a weakness in regards to the way Sanders does politics. And here we are, undone by his weakness. And right now, in the middle of a pandemic, where 16.6 or 16.8 million people have lost their jobs, 4 or 5 million people are not necessarily going to have health care. And the most imaginative thing that Sanders can do at this moment is get out the race. I'm not going to turn this into a beat up on Sanders thing. I don't want that to be the case. I'm just making the point that there are opportunities. It's possible that Sanders is tired. The man is a near octogenarian. So it's not me taking the piss out of him. He did momentous things and he got you momentous bonuses that you need to consider. Right off the bat, this notion that you can't run a campaign without taking cash is off the table. He kills that immediately. If you run with a certain degree of authenticity and a certain degree of integrity and the public believes you and your assertions about what you want to do, that public will back you and that public will send you cash. They can't make the argument that you can't run without that funding mechanism. The idea that you can take all of this money from oligarchs and then do incremental change, and that's the best that you can do, again, it's off the table. The idea that the policies that Sanders was pushing and that the left advocates for weren't popular, off the table. They're massively popular. All of those things are things that the Democratic Party has told you for the last 40, 50 years were impossible, people didn't like, etc. Nonsense. That is off the table. He has gotten you bonuses. You've also realized now that there are tens of millions of people across the country just like you with similar ideology, similar bearing that would go out, that would send money, that would campaign, that would push, that would all of that. If the guy was pushing or if the woman was pushing for your particular agenda in regards to what you wanted to get accomplished ideologically, they're there. They're all around you. They're all across the United States. Sanders and his campaign was able to web those people together. And the biggest fear in the world is that once Sanders goes away, that group falls apart. None of those people know each other. And it just goes up in smoke. That's the fear. That's one of the problems. What I want to discuss in this video is basically, you're not lost. In fact, I would make the argument that you're potentially on the verge of being found. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. I'm going to keep this video short, and I actually mean short because I do need to get out the house. But, you know, it does burn, and my feelings towards Sanders are complicated because I love the guy. And it's like the thing that makes him authentic and the thing that makes people love him is the exact same thing and the reason why he lost the race. You're in a political contest of political combat of people who want to do anything that's necessary to win. And you say, well, I'm not going to do everything that's necessary to win. They breaches my ethical standards. The political contest doesn't care about your ethical standards. They're not real. Just like the political contest in and of itself is not real, even though you guys are engaging in a conceptual combat based on a game space. Your ethics don't apply in this game space. They just don't. They apply to the point that people look at you and need you to be authentic. And no, you can't necessarily lie and cheat and everything else. That will breach who you are as Sanders. But this ethical guideline of not going after your opponent, that is political malpractice on a mind-blowing level. And that needs to be called out as such. Because going forward, you need to understand that these guidelines, Jeremy Corbyn, same thing. That's not what this is about. That's like you sitting down playing chess. I say, I don't like rooks. So fuck playing with rooks. Your opponent is going to play with rooks because the game space allows him to do so. You maximize your potential by using everything within the game space that's allowed to go after your opponent. That's competition. That's what that is. That is literally by definition what that is. I don't understand this notion of not doing that. Beyond that point. So that's what I'm saying for Sanders, his ideology, the thing that you love him is the same thing that you hate about him. But for the same point, everybody else and the left, the question becomes, now what? There's a lot of lefties who are throwing their lot in with Joe Biden, just folding in. What I ask you is, over the past 50 years, you have done just that. You have nowhere else to go. You have nowhere else to go. And you have thrown your lot in with the Democratic Party as if you were a Democrat. In 2020, learn from your mistakes. The Democratic Party lined up in mass against everything you believed in. Everything that you believed in, that they say that they bought it, they lined up in mass. And each and every one of them was willing to go and have a brokered convention, even if that means losing to Trump, to stop you. What do you do as a lefty? And in a party that called you racist, that called you sexist, that called you bros, that said you were just all white, and visibilizing all of these blacks, Hispanics, and Asians, like, they attacked you. They didn't even go to Bernie because they couldn't hit Bernie on anything because he's fucking authentic. Again, one of the reasons you love him, it's his strength. Rigidity is not. There's a difference in those things. And they end up, because they couldn't lay a glove on him, just hitting us, attacking us, smearing us, month after month after month after month after month. And then for you as lefties to turn around and say, okay, I'm Joe Biden now. I'm going to back the party. How shameful. How embarrassing and cowardly. They talk shit about you for months on end. And your response is going to be, now I'm going to back Joe Biden because I'm terrified of Trump. Why do you believe they disrespect you? It's this. It's this. It happened in 2016. It's happening in 2020. It would happen in 2024. This pattern that you repeat for the last 40, 50 years. At which point do you have some analysis and think, maybe this isn't working? Because guess what? It's not working. Your strategy of falling in line, you're going to get creatures like Sam Cedar and Nier Tandon that's going to be like, oh, you got to vote for this particular person. The reality of it is, those people are sheepdogs, every bit as much as you want to think Sanders is. Those people are connected with the Democratic Party and are out there for political reasons telling you that you need to do the same. What do you want to get accomplished politically? Is the only thing that matters. Everything else is subordinate to that. And as the left, fractured, spread out across the country, not necessarily connected, you can't make a united front argument, which is basically one of the main problems of the left. And not just not make that argument, you are so many of us have been cowed and terrified, just outright utter cowardice, that you betray the fact that you have all of these issues from a philosophical standpoint, almost a cosmic standpoint, that you want to get done in regards to ameliorating the concerns and the pain within the context of the population. 40, 50 years, you have abandoned that responsibility. The Democratic Party has shown itself that it has no interest in your policy priorities. It put that decrepit potential rapist over the finish line in order to stop you and what you wanted to accomplish. Real things that they can't even argue anymore that it's not popular. And you fall in line. Why do you think they disrespect you so? Why do you feel so maligned? Why do you think they ignore what you want from a policy perspective? Does it potentially have anything to do with the level of indecency and disrespect that you show yourself by being willing to accept all of that shit and still call yourself Democrats? They are putting Joe Biden, that's your guy. Joe Biden is your standard bearer. The guy who can't get out a coherent statement, who can't get out a coherent speech, who said if Medicare for All miraculously got passed, I would veto the legislation with, again, the middle of a pandemic. Millions, 16.8 million people without a job, and 4 or 5 million people at this point without health insurance. I'd veto it. That's your standard bearer. And you're telling me that you fall in line after that. Don't cry to me that you're being ignored or you're being disrespected, or why don't they take us seriously? Why don't they fall in with our policy proposals? I don't understand. As if power concedes anything without a demand. And fact of the matter is, The union movement in and of itself is built with this notion of working in an organization, dealing with a power distribution that is unequal, and being able to say, no, I'm done. I am not willing to accept this particular situation. And they stop work, fully understanding that the company itself could go tits up because of it. Why do they do it? They do it because they realize that at a certain point, you are just being taken advantage of, which is what I'm trying to point out to you. For all of these lefties who love unions, how weak and cowardly are you that you don't necessarily pick up the principle of those unions? If you want to get anything real accomplished, your ability to organize and get together almost en masse and to be able to say no en masse to effectively an outright betrayal of anything from the standpoint of FDR principles or even from the standpoint of betrayal of yourself, because your policy for the last 50 years has utterly failed. If you want to get anything accomplished, it is time to give a demand of what you want. First point, Medicare for all, get rid of student debt, Green New Deal, whatever. Make your demand. And being willing to say, this is no longer a race to the bottom. I am no longer in this process with the notion of one particular election because this is not going to be won in the fires of a glorious election. That ship has sailed with Sanders being too weak and unable to go after his friend Joe Biden. What does it mean, however, from the point of everybody else? And what does everybody else do in this process? Is everybody else clear and certain to be able to say, yeah, I'm done. I'm not touching this. Even if it means Trump wins. Because fact of the matter is you are not going to get what you want in the fires of one glorious election and maybe not even 2 elections. Fact of the matter is your ability to come together and say, this is what we want, is your strength in this process. There are millions of you. Making that point extraordinarily and abundantly clear is your way, your only way of getting anything accomplished. Whether that takes place in one election, your credibility, respect, your legitimacy, all of that stuff hinges on your particular ability to be fanatical and ruthless in your devotion to a cause. If that cause is Medicare for all, if that cause is Green New Deal, that's where it starts. Sanders was not that person to do that. The left, in and of itself, needs to be able to do that. And part of that means you need to take on Medicare for all. It's popular with the public. The overwhelming majority of the Democrats want it, etc. And we will not vote for you by tens of millions if you don't. The Democratic Party can accept it or not. If it doesn't accept it and they lose, fair enough. But you've just organized tens of millions of people to your particular cause and shown a certain degree of political legitimacy. Yes, Trump sucks, and you would have to deal with that. But understand the situation to which you find yourself. None of your policy objectives will get accomplished ever out of cowardice, because you are so willing to allow yourself to be cowed and folded into a party that has no interest in accomplishing those objectives because you're terrified of Trump. Your ability to get anything politically accomplished has to do with you realizing that you are not a Democrat, first and foremost. And if that party fails, then it fucking fails. Your organization of realizing that you're not a Democrat, I don't care what you call yourself not a Democrat. And it being that starts to accretion disc of sorts, where people start to come together and start to organize together, realizing that they're not part of that party. If that party continuously loses, I understand it sucks to some degree that the Republican gets in office, but at the same token, you may end up being something else, and that just may be the process that's necessary in order to come up with a party that can actually attend to the needs of the public. Burn it down and come up with something else, or board the ship. The boarding the ship doesn't look like it's working. It's time for the burn it down segment. These groups that have come out and said, we have $100 million. We need Joe Biden to do this, 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 and this. Making a demand. Those youth groups are fucking great. Yes. Bernie Sanders should fall in line with those youth groups and say, Joe Biden has my endorsement. However, I would understand why a large contingent of my supporters would not vote for him if he's not backing these policy ideas that we have shown winning the ideological battle is popular. Again, he has my endorsement, but I totally understand why these people won't vote for him because of such. Yes, that's smash mouth politics. But what the fuck are you doing? This is issues of power, right? You take every opportunity at your disposal to try to win. And I don't understand the model and the mindset that doesn't do that. These youth groups who said we have $100 million, we will use this for or against whoever is against our priorities. If that's Joe Biden, so be it. That's politics. That's you using your political leverage and what you have at your disposal with a fanatical devotion of getting what you want to accomplish. That should be backed and supported. That should be an accretion disc of people coming together, realizing this is what we want. And we are unwilling to settle for anything else. And until you get there, nothing you want gets accomplished. I'm fucking honest with you. I am fucking certain on this. And I don't like hitting certainty, because certainty is one of those things where there's always something you haven't necessarily thought of. But for 50 years, this has been your policy and your plan. And at no point do people say, wait a minute, shouldn't we think about this? Is there something else that we could be doing? Maybe you have fucked up so in allowing yourself to be cowed into the Democratic Party that you can't take it in one election. Maybe it actually is like cleaning up a room, where it takes the fact that you've let that room go for so long that there's a penalty and there's a cost in regards to your physical labor in getting it done. The most important point there is there's a cost. The cost is that you need to first grow a spine and a backbone if you want to get anything ever accomplished. And there is no way for you to grow a spine for them to shit on you like that for months. Shit on your candidate for months. And then you turn around and back them. They're against everything that you want in regards to policy, regardless of what they say. They've shown themselves to be that. What you have done for the past 50 years hasn't worked. Period. You have failed utterly and miserably in getting anything accomplished in regards to working in the context of the Democratic Party. You are the politically equivalent of an abused spouse. Grow up, walk away, and do so en masse. That is your pathway to getting your policies accomplished. They think that you're going to automatically back them, which means they don't have to give you anything, which is the point, right? Which is my point. Nothing you want politically from the standpoint of policy is going to get accomplished for as long as you are being cowed and is willing to fall in line with a party that will say, treat, do anything to you and you still acquiesce. They don't have to do anything to you because you allow yourself, you incentivize that level of being taken advantage of. You don't believe me? Look back at this election with Sanders in 2016 and 2020 and tell me that being an honest, decent man in that political process was honored. It was not. That's not politics. You have an objective. Within the context of the game space, you do whatever is necessary to win, providing it's legal and providing it's fair game. That's not what happened in this race. And from the standpoint of the left, if you want to get anything accomplished, I suggest you grow a spine. Otherwise, you will continue to be taken advantage of. Your pathway to getting anything accomplished is organizing. That group, or those 7 groups that came together, should be a starting point for a large mass exodus into something else. I don't even care what you call it. The first point, however, is recognizing that you are not that party. Those two things are distinct and different in the context of what you want versus what it wants. And for as long as it can con you into believing that your interests are somehow aligned, you will continue to be frustrated and not get what you want in the political space. It's been 50 years. Try something different. Like, share, subscribe.